So our good follower of the channel, Marcy fan, who is seems to be a very learned guy and kind of talked in poetry tonight. We did a podcast on the grade eight of the Cincinnati Reds. This is what he said: "You owe it to us and yourself to do a video about the best lineup the Montreal Expos ever had, whether it's a strike shortened season or not. I don't remember how the Expos did when Perez, but it did. It'd make for interesting view, and I tend to agree. So for Marcy and for the other fans on the channel who would agree with me, the closest they ever came to the World Series has to be the best season ever. Because were it not for Monday on Monday and the Steve Rogers bullshit pitch in the top of the ninth inning, we would have won the World Series that year. The world would have unraveled for sure because I think we would have bet the Yankees. Now that '81 season was the split season. We won the second half in first place with a better record than the first half. 30 and 25 the first half. We were third. 30 and 23 in the second half. It was our 13th season of franchise history and the first time we make the playoffs. We were loaded with talent. Even Terry Francona was there. They made it to postseason again for the first time in franchise history, and our team only came back 31 years later as the Washington Nationals in the playoffs. Their playoff run ended the NLCS against the Dodgers, with Rick Monday hitting a ninth-inning solo home run in Game 5, subsequently referred to as Blue Monday by Expo fans. This was the closest the Expos ever got to a World Series appearance, while in Montreal, and I think it relatively killed the franchise's whole documentary on that '81 debacle. Now, separated in two halves due to the '81 Major League Baseball strike, we ended up 60 and 48. Now, owners, of course, was that bootlegger, twice removed Charles Bronfman, who opened the floodgates. General manager John McHale eventually let Dick Williams go, our excellent manager from Oakland, and longtime executive Jim Fanning took over. Now, this is kind of interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Blanket coverage, CBC TV and SRC French TV and radio were broadcasting every game nationwide, so it was pretty big. Now, they gave up on Tony Bernazard in the offseason, signed Willie Montañez, signed Ken Maka, and of course the big addition was the underrated hurler Ray Burrs, who was signed as a free agent by the Expos. Now, after holding spring training at City Island Ballpark in Daytona from '73 to '80, the Expos returned to West Palm Beach Municipal Stadium in West Palm Beach, Florida, a facility they shared with the Braves for spring training in '81. It was their fifth season at the stadium. They had also conducted spring training there from '69 to '72. The Expos would train at Municipal Stadium through '97. Now, ironically, the big thing with in the season was Steve Carlton. He struck out rookie Tim Wallach for the 3,000th strikeout of his career. Now, on May 10th, the very, very young and the very, very talented Charlie Lee pitched a no-hitter against the Giants, defeating them 4-0 at Olympic Stadium. The last house was recorded by Andre Dawson in center field. Leo would go on to shout the Giants a week later on 4 hits in San Francisco for good measure. So they ended up 12-4 in April, 14-5 in May, and 14-6 in June. So they had a really, really hot start. They won 11-8 in August, 16-14 in September, and of course the big 3-1 record in the October. Now again, the season standings, they finished behind St. Louis, who had a better overall record than they did, and the second half standings were quite interesting. You won by 1 game over the Cardinals and almost a full 4.5 games against the Phillies. Now, Montreal had a really interesting run that year because they weren't beating Western Division teams. They had a hard time with them. The big thing with Pittsburgh, they were 10-3 in head-to-head and 7-4 against the Phillies. Now, it was a very, very interesting transaction year for Expos. They picked up John Tamargo and released him, but Ellis Valentine was traded by the Expos and the Mets for Jeff Reardon and Dan Norman. I think Montreal was giving up on the big guy. Now, in the Major League Baseball draft, Mike Fuentes, Mark McGuire, we drafted him in the 8th round, Marvin Freeman, and Al Newman. Now, Willie Montañez was basically traded for John Milner, gave us some good bat strength. Now, Major League debuts that year, including Terry Francona, Mike Yates, Dave Hostetler, Tony Johnson, Wallace Johnson, Pat Rooney, Chris Smith, and Tom Wiggis, and pitchers Rick Engel, Tom Corman, and a very young Brent Smith. Now, the opening day roster for Montreal was quite strong. Gary Carter, Warren Cromani at first, Andre Dawson, Larry Parrish, Tim Raines, Steve Rogers, Rodney Scott, Chris Spire, and Ellis Valentine. The pitchers, again, a mixture of veterans and up-and-coming players. Stan Bonson, Ray Burris, Rick Engel, Woody Fryman, Tom Gorman, Bill Gullingson, Grant Jackson, Charlie Lee, Bill Lee, Steve Ratzer, Jeff Reardon, Steve Rogers, Scott Sanderson, Brent Smith, Elias Sosa. You had Carter, Ramos, and Wiggos as catchers. Infielder, you had Briggs, Cromartie, Gates, Hostetler, Tommy Hutton, Wallace Johnson, Jerry Manuel, Brad Mills, John Milner, Willie Montañez, Larry Parrish, Mike Phillips, Rodney Scott, Chris Smith, and of course Chris Spire. The outfield was loaded. Ellis was traded, but you had Dawson, Francona, Tony Johnson, Roland Office, Bob Pate, Timmy Raines, Pat Rooney, Tim Wallach, who was still playing outfield at the time, hadn't taken Larry Parrish's full place at third, and Jerry White. And the coaches were very strong, including the great Ozzie Virgil and Norm Sherry. Now, Carter had 16 home runs and 16 RBIs in the strike-shortened season. Cromartie, 6 homers, 42 RBIs. Cool Breeze only hit 205 with 26 RBIs. 1762 for Parrish. Spire, 2 for 25. Home runs, 537 for Timmy Raines. Of course, a bunch of stolen bases. Dawson, 24-64. He led the league in home runs. And 413 for Wallach. And again, at Francona in spot play, had a solid 274. He was the best person on the bench. Rogers went 12-8. Gullickson was 7-9. Sanderson was 9-7. And Ray Burris was 9-7. Bill Lee in short relief and starter 5-6. Charlie Lee 5-4. Woody Fryman 5-3. And Jeff Reardon got in 25 games. Now, the postseason was interesting because they went out in the divisional series, got a 2-0 lead against Philadelphia in Montreal, and then went back to Philadelphia and almost fell apart. They lost 6-5 in 10 innings in Game 4, then knocked off Philly as Steve Rogers defeated Steve Carlton in a pitcher's duel. Of course, Donald Sutherland was there to celebrate with the Expos. Now, the LA-Montreal series was quite interesting. Bert Hooton outlasted Bill Gullickson in the first game, even though Montreal outhit them 9-8. And Pedro Guerrero and Socha had a great game. The second game was the big shocker. Ray Burris shut out the Dodgers and Fernando Valenzuela in front of 53,000 fans. Despite 4 relievers, Montreal got the best of Fernando. Now, Game 3, where Montreal almost put a solid hold on it because of a 4-1 win led by Jerry White's home run. And again, Game 4 was quite interesting because the Dodgers in Montreal were tied up until the top of the 8th. Dodgers scored 2 and then 4 in the top of the ninth to win it all. And of course, that had the great Steve Garvey home run. Now, the game against Montreal, LA did their best to get back in the game. I think Valenzuela scored on the double play, not an RBI, of course, and but Bob Welch got the save. But Rick Mundy, the Monday on Monday home run was the big one. Now, called Blue Monday, a decisive Game 5, they're only NLCS. The Expos were defeated 2-1 by the Dodgers. Raines opened the bottom of the first with a double against Cy Young Award winner Valenzuela. It scored on an Andre Dawson double play ball. Dawson had a terrible series, by the way. Valenzuela held the Expos scoreless the rest of the way, however, and the Dodgers tied the game at 1-1, the top of the 5th with 2 hits and a wild pitch and RBI ground out off Expos starter Ray Burris. Sorry, I was thinking a double play with Valenzuela. Struggling closer, Jeff Reardon was throwing alongside Rogers at the bullpen at the time, but Fanning elected to summon his ace. Rogers, who rarely pitched in relief, retired Garvey and Ron Say in order, but outfielder Rick Mundy homered in center field to put the LA Dodgers ahead 2-1 and crush the Expos' hopes of advancing to the World Series. 2 odd walks from Carter and Parrish were all the Expos could muster in the ninth, as Bob Welch preserved a 1-run Dodger victory by getting Jerry White on the groundout. The Expos lost 3-0 and again never returned to the postseason as a franchise until 2012. Now, why I'm saying this is probably the best Expo team, and I'll give you why. Gary Carter was the All-Star Game MVP. He also won a Gold Glove Award. Dawson won a Gold Glove Award. Charlie Lee was pitcher of the month award for May. Tim Raines was the Sporting News Rookie of the Year award winner. Wally was the NL League leader at stolen bases with 71. All-Star game, it was Dick Williams as head coach, Gary Carter starter at catcher, Dawson starter in the outfield, and Timmy Raines outfielder reserve. Now, the great Felipe Alou was coaching our Denver Bears. That's why a lot of players were ready. And Double A was the Memphis Chicks. Single A, West Palm Beach Expos. Short season was the Jamestown Expos. And Calgary Expos was their rookie team. So they had the pitching, they had the hitting. They just basically was bad luck. They had a very shortened season. I think if we would have played the whole year, they would have easily had won 92 or 94 games. Rhines was coming along, even though he had drug problems. But the big problem in Montreal that year, Dawson choked in the playoffs. And Larry Parrish didn't get any timely hits, and it's just what it is. A bunch of 12 home run, 50 RBI people. They needed more from Dawson that had the regular season. In the playoffs, it never came about. And that's why we lost to the Dodgers. But you're facing Fernando Valenzuela twice. Beating him once, you can do it. But beating him twice, I don't think so. The baseball gods were shining on the Dodgers that year, and that was their revenge title against the Yankees. It was their year. So, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, 1981 Expos, greatest of all time. And 94 was good as well. But the fact is, we had a real chance to beat the Yankees because the Yankees were beatable. And the Dodgers proved that. The Dodgers barely squeaked by us, and they met the Yankees in 6, so you do the math on that. Can you imagine Andre Dawson and Timmy Raines and Gary Carter playing at Yankee Stadium in the World Series? It boggles the mind. Them losing there killed the franchise. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. Thanks for listening, and keep the requests coming. Give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share.